Welcome to Swimming with Allocators,
the VC podcast from the LP perspective,
with your hosts, Alexa Binns
and Ernest Sweat. You ready? Let's dive in. Welcome to Swimming with Allocators. Today we have Rongjie Wang. She's the founder and managing partner and chief investment officer of Primitiva Global. That's a family office that's investing in AI, deep tech, and early stage venture. She's trained as a physicist from Cambridge. She's a software engineer. She's been an equity research analyst, and she's been a tech operator in startups. So this woman has seen things from every point of view. She shares with us today her unique investing approach, having a foot in both Silicon Valley, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. She also shares with us her impossible triangle theory on AI progress, which is fascinating, and the patterns that she's found in her best emerging managers. Welcome, Jay.
Hi, Alexa. Hi, Ernest. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the very kind intro.
We had a lot to pack in. Maybe we start at the very beginning of this family office. Your mom was a Web 1.0 entrepreneur in the 1990s. How did that shape your worldview?
Yeah, so obviously super proud of my mom as a woman. I think the first thing that was special was that was her courage, because before she started her first company, she was working for a oil company, those large conglomerates, super stable job. You could retire from it, and then you can, there's only one way your position can go, which is up. And by that time, she was already a very capable engineer and a executive. She built, prior to her first tech venture, she built a port essentially in Shanghai. She was the would you call it, the overall project manager for that project. So but still, I think at the time everybody told her not to do it. Everybody was like, first of all, nobody understood tech. It was a year when none of my classmates had a personal computer at home. And she was like, I'm going to go build a tech business. And so obviously very few people would understand what it was. People would think that it's totally crazy. And especially in context of what she already had. She just finished a great project. She was probably about to be promoted, and then she probably had, there was so much to lose. And then back in the 90s, in Shanghai, your companies really take care of you. Like the house that we were living in was given by the company, right? Wow. They give you houses, they give you everything. So so the contrast made it, I think, in regular terms, pretty hard to make that jump. But she was so strong-headed and determined that she did it anyway. So I think the lesson taken from there, obviously just growing up with that energy and that, sort of authenticity had a lot of influence, but retrospectively, my mom and I still talk about it to this day. It's like, it really takes a lot of stubbornness to stay true to who you are, but it's really worth it. And it pays to not listen to people. It pays to be contrarian. So I think that was the number one thing I observed from my mother. I think growing up with that also had very concrete implication of how I experienced childhood and life as well. Because when I was somewhere around 11, 12 years old, because my mom doing what she was doing, I ended up spending a lot of time playing computer games, MMORPG. And what that meant is that I was the only child probably in the game. And then you would interact a lot with people from, all walks of life. And same thing, my mom taught me how to build personal websites. At the time, it was very archaic technology from today's perspective, but I built I did not only build my own website, and made a lot of friends from it. But I just became the go-to person for website building, like for anime club of my school, and like reading club from my school, newspaper of the school. So, because I was the only one who knows how to do it and actually like take a site online.
Clearly, your mom's influence as an entrepreneur in your life has had impact of like increasing creativity and community for you.
Yeah.
But curious how it impacted like your association with risk, because
Yeah.
you meet a lot of entrepreneur kids who had entrepreneur parents. It can go
Yeah.
either way on how they feel
can go
about
either way,
risk.
yes.
So curious on how it impacted your life.
I think for me, it was a very humbling experience actually growing up with that, because, the best product at the time, which was the kids community website, it was so well run. It was run by a bunch of people who love kids, and they make it so colorful and native for the kids. People say like an AI native these days, but that website was kids native, and but it didn't survive. So, lesson number one: best product doesn't make it a best startup. And so I think it just make me like uber aware of how challenging it was to succeed and how many components I didn't have. I actually don't know the cause of it. Like, I don't know if it's being a girl, being, East Asian, or it's just being me. I don't know if it's genetic, but like I tend to focus on what I don't yet have and don't yet know. As you can imagine, it can be a bias a lot of the times. But as a result, like a lot of my early career, I would say, especially those like personal choices in the first 10 years of my career, was around maximizing my chance of success instead of actually going to try and succeed. So as an example, I figured, again, it was just so deeply ingrained that when I was a teenager, I already knew every company was going to be a tech company, every single company. So I was like, okay, if my aspiration is to be a business owner and found my own company, I need to do software engineering. Like, I needed to understand how code works. I needed to understand how computers work and systems work, which was what motivated me to take my graduate job right out of college to be a software engineer. And then and I was like, okay, that's like one of the many components. I was like, another component was, in order to run a good business, you need to understand, like, you need to be able to tell good businesses from bad businesses. You need to understand the constituents, components of a good businesses. And that's why I kind of did a very hard pivot from software engineering to equity research for investment funds. And then I was like, okay, it's not enough to just intellectually understand good businesses from bad businesses from an analytical perspective. Because as equity researcher, equity analyst, you talk about margin expansion or revenue expansion, and I was very curious. Okay, like if you project yourself, to the CEO of like Airbus or whoever, you're like, okay, what do I exactly need to do to make that margin expansion? So that's why I figured like, okay, I just need to do it, and that's why I again made a very harsh pivot into the startup world and became a product person, a growth person, a operation person. And then lastly, I was like, okay, it's not just enough to understand like software. Like, I need to see how goods are built and shipped, which was why I kind of wrapped up that journey with a stint managing a hardware company. So as you can see, like it just this sense of not being ready. And again, like I don't know what it is. I think statistically speaking, being a female has a little bit to do of it. I had this so I was a physicist at Cambridge, and then I was talking to, there are girls' colleges in Cambridge. So there are like 30 something colleges, and then most of them are co-ed, but then there are girls' colleges, and each college would have a director of studies. And then I was talking to the director of studies of Murray Edward, which was a girls' college at Cambridge. So he's a star physicist, but he's a man, right? So I was like, over your career, what do you notice about the girl physicists and the boy physicists? And he said that like girls never feel ready before an exam until she is 120% prepared.
Wow.
I mean, again, it's an overgeneralization, but that's what he shared, and that is so true. So before exam, when you talk to the boys, like, okay, like how's it going, right? Like how's the study going? And they'll be like, yeah, like, I kind of got it. Like if they're like 70% prepared, they will feel 70% prepared. You talk to a girl, right? If they're 70% prepared, they feel they're 0% prepared. They're like, oh my God, I'm gonna fail the exam. So I think like this over-preparedness kind of certainly carries into my career choices a lot. And now I understand, right? Like the alternative approach is to do it and fail a bunch and learn along the way and until you succeed, instead of, almost trying to create a 10-year boot camp for you to prepare for your success.
Hot seat question. Everyone named their most hated sign. Go. No, joking. So Jay, you talked about these life patterns, and as you know, at your firm, you do both directs and invest in funds as well. For the fund managers, what traits have you seen that really indicate not only a fit for you or somebody to partner with, but someone you believe is going to produce alpha?
There's the metaphysical answer and there's the practical answer.
Oh, I want to hear both. This is going to be a gnarly episode. I love it.
I think the metaphysical one, I look for congruence. I think because the business model of VC is very undifferentiated from each other, relatively speaking, compared to other industries, right?
Totally.
The product is very similar, the way you make money, the pricing, it's commodities. The business model itself that creates a commodity. So then, especially in our world with emergent VCs, and a lot of them are solo GPs, it really is a person bet. I believe that congruent people are more likely or had a higher probability of producing outstanding results. What that means is that there's more than one way to win in anything, in investing, in sports, in business building. But you just need to be very truthful to yourself, the way you approach business, the way you hire, the way you set your vision, the product that you make, the kind of things. So in the context of emergent GPs, like the kind of things that you invest, are you a people person or are you a tech person? If your energy naturally goes toward reading people, then does your underwriting process and what you say reflect that? If you make up your mind relatively quickly and binarily about people, does your process stay truthful to that? So I think this is true on so many levels, by the way. Like we look at large organizations with tens of thousands of people and producing similar things, and why some of them succeed and some of them fail. I think what we call like those organizational congruence is also very important. For example, people debate like what's the right culture, right? What's the right culture? Is it like creativity, high trust, like non-hierarchical versus dictatorial, like one boss says everything, and like strict rule-based process, come at work on time. Like which one's better, right? You would see outstanding results produced by both sets of beliefs. But then the question is, does everything else work with it? Are you congruent? So for example, the product that you make, the industry you're in, the leadership, personalities, the pay that you give people, do they match these different sets of beliefs? And are they pointing to the same direction? And it's same thing. I'm using an analogy there, but like same thing with the GPs. It's like, does your portfolio construction and the way you source, the way you underwrite, your LP base, does that all point to the direction which is the easiest for you to execute as an individual? Because it's such an uphill battle to pretend to be who you are not. The work, the daily work is a grind, obviously, but like it feels like it's at least they're not wasting energy to convince themselves like that they are a VC.
Yeah, there's an element of flow there.
Exactly.
There was a cool congruence is such an awesome term. Nobody has mentioned that in at all in terms of what they look for in a GP today, which is so cool. Charles Hudson just did a piece that was on how in instructing his ChatGPT, he has had to have these conversations with himself that are reflective. Like in order to give clear instructions to have his own AI trained on how he thinks, he's having to become more familiar with how he thinks.
Yeah.
And so he realized some of the things he's been saying about what he thinks and does aren't actually what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So what a cool, should you be looking to try to hone your own pitch and get better at congruence, I think some of those working on your like AI ops is weirdly like a helpful tool to do that.
Yeah, that's a very good tip.
Okay, you said the metaphysical.
Yeah.
And then you said there's sort of two planes on which you are reviewing GPs. What's the practical sort of cliff notes?
Yeah.
Because that metaphysical DDQ looks, I'm just envisioning it. It looks intense.
Yeah, this is the trick, right? You don't ask about it directly. I think it's very hard for me to say like, okay, this is what you look for, but I can share kind of the framework that I use to look for congruence, and then different ways that people demonstrate congruence can pop up along the way. So like first conversation, we always look for what we call like winner energy. And internally we call it like this winner test, actually. And again, that can manifest itself in very different ways. If you look at our portfolio funds, there are GPs who present themselves very aggressively, and there are GPs who are just zen, like totally zen, with very few words, so to speak. So again, like winners, I think this is another thing I appreciate about life is that winners can take many different shapes or forms. Hard to articulate, but for people who have the energy, I think by the end of the second conversation, we usually have an investment thesis already. We usually have a explanation to if this person were to weigh, why? Okay, like, it's not sourcing advantage, or it's actually not those like regular VC narratives. But we look for something specific about this person that can explain the final victory of him or her. And then the rest of the 3 to 6 month DD is kind of looking for affirmation to that theory. We have a theory already, and then we look for affirmation, and then this is where usually the GP opens up the database. Then we look at the the data room, and then we look at the memos, the investment schedule, and then try to see if it challenges our theory or does it like affirms our theory. So for funds that demonstrate higher congruent, it's actually easy to see affirmation because they're truthful to how they do business and why they believe they should win. And same thing with when it comes to references, which we do quite heavily as well, on list and off list. Again, usually the ones that leads to a very firm yes, demonstrate, every founder I talk to would tell me something about this GP that is congruent with the thesis that we already have about this GP.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had a family dog that everyone would describe as handsome. Your dog is so handsome.
Oh, handsome.
Wow.
There we go.
And you're like, why does that word just keep coming out of every stranger walking down the street? Why does every reference say this person is so, committed or whatever it is? The one, like they keep saying the same descriptive.
This is a good thing, and it means like every comment is pointing to the same direction, right? It means at least if there's a pageant or you know that he's a very high likely winner, right? Or if there's like a dog for like love at first sight dog context or like, then like again another example might be I just use a random one, like maybe Idan, because everybody knows what he's like, right? If this is the point, like there's no right or wrong way to do business, but if your theory about him is that just his ruthlessness explains the success of, just because he deprioritizes everything, right? To him the priority is very clear, right? Everything that propels my vision to this, like I do, everything else doesn't matter. That doesn't matter if it hurts your feelings, whatnot. And if you believe that it's correlated to success, and then it's very easy to look for affirmation to that trait. Actually, everybody will tell you the same thing. Everybody who works with him would say something that was like, "Yep, that adds up." And he's just being honest to himself. He's not trying to pretend to be nice, or who he's not, right? And there's the added benefit of kind of saving energy to produce success, because then you are not fighting that internal battle of pretending to be who you're not.
Now we're going to take a quick break to speak with our sponsor.
Today we have industry experts Idan Netzer and Jason Kropp, partners at Sidley's fast-growing emerging companies and venture capital practice. Is there specific regulation that you all are tracking closely for your VC clients that our audience should also be tracking?
Ooh, so there's one again that gets me excited. It relates somehow to tax, surprisingly, but the tax treatment of carried interest as capital gain versus ordinary income has been in discussions for many, many years now, and there's always a lot of pressure on whether or not carried interest will continue to be taxed as capital. Again, that is a major issue and a huge incentive for funds to be structured the way they are. The rules have changed a number of years ago, and there are new requirements that are slightly getting older, but they're a few years in the play now, which means that folks needs to hold their interest for a number of years before they can benefit from long-term capital gains treatment. I would say keep tracking those developments, because there are lobbies out there trying to get that eliminated. We like that, obviously. We think it's a good incentive for funds and funds activities. So that's one. And the second one is, as we mentioned, qualified small business stock, which is a huge benefit from a federal tax standpoint, as well as some states which conform with federal, and you can get essentially tax-free distributions on earnings from small businesses. And most of the startups that we deal with, at least at the beginning of their lives, qualify, right? So one is understanding QSBS is absolutely crucial. And if you don't know what that means or exactly how that plays, you should go and read some of the materials. There's plenty of stuff out there. Read through it. So QSBS is one of them. Not all companies qualify as QSBS, and that's another thing to understand. So depending on the type of investments, I would urge GPs to try to steer their investments towards businesses that do qualify, just because that tax advantage is meaningful. But if they don't, that's okay, as long as you know it, as long as you understand that you're getting into an investment that will not qualify in the future.
Yeah, I've definitely been put in that position where the founder's legal team won't tell you if it qualifies or not. And you're like, well, that you did just tell me. Thank you. if you're not writing something down in an email to confirm this, then I know the answer.
So the market practice on this is for companies to make the determination and provide the assurance to their investors and, in fact, to their stockholders. Generally speaking, that includes employees as well, by a way of issuing what we call a determination letter that says, hey, you should know that, assuming nothing else happens and you hold the shares for 5 years, those shares qualify for QSBS, because that's the only tax record that folks would have when they take the position on their individual tax returns. That is absolutely the market standard by now. It's not an expensive thing for the company to do. It's a good service to its stockholders, and there's absolutely no reason not to do it, especially if you're qualified.
On my end, I do a fair bit of life sciences, biotech, and med device work. And so the changes at FDA over the last few months have been particularly notable for a number of the clients that I work with and the investors in those clients. First of all, there's a tremendous amount of expertise here at Sidley with respect to that world. And it's one of the reasons that I came here recently. But setting aside that expertise, it's just notable that there's a lot of uncertainty around drug pricing, around the ability to get through FDA processes and the like. What I've been hearing from colleagues here is that fundamentally the FDA is still open for business. The FDA is doing its job. Responses are coming back. But having an understanding of how the FDA thinks about things and how the FDA will deal with certain questions and how companies ought to be dealing with inquiries from the FDA is more important than ever.
Thank you for joining us on the show. If you are an LP, GP, or founder interested in seeking Sidley's expert advice, you can find each partner's contact on Sidley's website. And now back to our LP interview.
You're giving a lot of wisdom and zen that I got in our pre-conversation, but I'm glad the audience is getting it too. And this idea of like congruence, I think it's a lot. And I just finished a book that is really relevant now, but it came out in 2003 called The Power of Full Engagement. And its whole kind of thesis is not about time management for success, especially to have outperformance, but it's really energy management.
Yes.
And this is knowing about yourself, not only at a physical state, emotional state, but kind of your mental focus, and then what drives you as far as like a spiritual or values-based approach. All that things matter. And so it's about conserving and giving you more energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I totally agree. I think that what I call mental capacity or executive energy is the most scarce resource of a founder or a leader. That basically dictates how much you can output.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so critical. I think the most draining, like I was talking to a portfolio GP the other day. I was like, what is the most draining thing for you? Like, what do you notice that drains your energy? I think it's a very worthwhile conversation to have for everybody, because you kind of want to, it's not that you're not smart enough or you're not doing the right things. Everybody in this industry is a hustler. It really is like how much mind space you are preserving for yourself and how much inner energy you're preserving to make the right decision when it really, really matters. Yeah.
Jay, because we put it in the intro, and I was so so impressed by like your intention when you go into new subjects and go digging. I wanted you to share with the audience about your impossible triangle concept and framework around AI. And so share that and explain what it means and how you use it as an investor.
So it came out of the research we started doing in 2023. I feel like everybody's doing it because at the time, essentially, we are trying to answer the question, what is the most certain implication of LLM? LLM has a lot of implications. This is, there are hundreds of posts that we scroll through on LinkedIn and social media and newsletters trying to answer similar questions and making predictions. But for us, we're looking for investors, you're playing the odds of probability. So relative certainty is important for us, right? Things can float around for a while, but we're looking for what is the directionally right? Mm-hmm. And in order to find that certainty, we felt like the next level question to ask that will lead to that certainty is, what is stopping us from achieving AGI overnight? Why is AGI not here yet? We're trying to find that delta, and whatever works toward that delta is certainty. Right? Because that is just what people will work on to bring us to AGI. So, and then one of the, again, there are many angles you can dissect that question, but one of the things, again, obvious in hindsight, is one of the things we found is that for AI to do its job incrementally better, and the reason why we're not in AGI today is the performance is not there. But can it perform better? Yes, it can. But for AI to do marginally better, the cost and latency, just the sheer amount of time that it will take to finish the task and the compute resource and cost it will consume goes exponentially higher. And whenever I pose this theory, people counter with, but compute cost is reducing very rapidly. I'm yes, I know it's reducing very rapidly, but any given time, the area of the triangle is fixed. So if you have performance/efficacy, cost, and latency, any given time, in this second, this is how much human can do, right? Because every time you make this better, this is gonna go worse. And when we say, but the compute cost is going down, it's declining, it means we are constantly expanding the triangle as time progress. And this is the direction that we want to bet on, is stuff that will expand the triangle, because it will expand, because it's going to happen. Well, with 99.99% of certainty. So this is what we mean by the impossible triangle, and then what that means is that it gives us again, it's one of the cues we use to filter signal. For example, earlier this year, we saw a company, actually, interestingly, when we were doing due diligence of a emerging manager, one of the companies that he did seed investing in was a GPU company that is more efficient for inference native use cases. So it is, for inference use cases, it is not only cheaper, but also more energy efficient. So because we had that impossible triangle theory up front, that we paid attention to this name, and in the end participated in the Series A of the company, direct, and started to have a somewhat strategic relationship with the company. And this is, I guess, this is a very good example of how research can help investing, and we're very proud of them. Another example that came out of this theory was there's a company that builds data center in space, basically to expand, it's seeing the tremendous compute demand.
Yeah.
and say, okay, where's the future of this going to be? And this is another company that we invested in. So
Well, it's cool to hear how those examples reflect the theory, how you've applied them. You were talking about having just been in San Francisco. A lot of our guests are Bay Area based. You all are between Silicon Valley, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Can you share with us any trends, specifically in either Hong Kong or Shanghai, that would be helpful to hear either from the GP or LP perspective that you can teach us all?
I've noticed the very successful fundraising stories for GPs from outside of the US, from Europe, Middle East, Hong Kong. Like there was a GP we were doing due diligence on, and they have a really robust AI thesis, very decent background as well. So we introduced them to several LPs in Hong Kong when they were visiting, and he said that Hong Kong is the first place where he closed an LP on the first meeting or something like that. Like, so not gonna lie, like every geography is hard. Like fundraising is hard. It doesn't mean that you show up in Middle East or in Hong Kong, in wherever, like money will just flow at you. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that in every other geography, I have seen very successful fundraising stories. So like if the GP is doing something right, and there is a ready audience to commit and to invest. Relatively speaking, I would say like information is still relatively asymmetric outside of US, relatively speaking, right? If you're in the Bay Area, you're inundated with opportunities. People who sit in London might not feel the same way. So I think if like the people who executed really well is the people who really understand their audience, they understand what these LPs want. And again, it's like, every single conversation is strengthening that message of I can give you what you want. I think a lot of the emerging GPs assume like performance is the only thing that people want. And I think they use the narrative that used to assess them in institutions to tell the story, which don't really, it's not a tailored message, right, to that particular LP.
What else might be interesting, like compared to an institutional investor? What else could you be looking for?
One example is and a second gen from overseas actually told me this. He wants bragging rights among his friends, among his second gen friends, right? So as a result, like he needs to be able to somehow show his muscle of, look, like I have good connections in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And now the GP who was having the conversation with this potential LP happens to not be sitting in Silicon Valley. And I mean, there are remedies to it, right? Like you have venture partners, you can like, I mean, the point being that the GP does have good, very robust networking in Silicon Valley. But like, if you don't know the motivation, you're not selling it. Like people in this LP circle, like, so if he wants to have bragging rights among other families, he's like, we don't care about New York. We don't, right? So like they want to show like his accent. He wants to show through this investment. He wants to show his connection in Silicon Valley, but the GP doesn't know it. He told it to me, but he wouldn't say that to GP. Like, I'm investing you for bragging rights. No, like he's not gonna say that.
One tension I want to get your advice on for other fund managers and investors is, how do you balance the constant curiosity that you have with your ability to dig down deep? And I think that's going to be an extreme, like your ability already to do that, go from that, one extreme to that next, I think will be extremely valuable in an AI over kind of like, data-driven world with so much noise. So what advice do you give for managers who may have difficulty in that?
The question is how to balance constant curiosity with focus.
Yes.
Okay, several things. The first is definitely embrace your curiosity. I think the best of the best are very curious. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, they're like, yes, they focus, but they're insanely curious about a lot of things. Like they know and they learn, and their reach for subject matters is like a lot wider than maybe we appreciate. So don't criticize your your appeared lack of focus. I think a lot of narrative is retrospective. Like if the GP is uber successful, then all of a sudden your lack of focus is not a problem anymore. So it's very results oriented, right?
Yeah.
Before you actually make it, before you run like a 10x fund, you're always gonna feel like, oh, I'm like, it's wrongly attribute, like it's wrongly attribute sort of lack of immediate success to lack of focus. I simply don't think that's true. I think I've seen, like, when you look at those huge results that are made in their early days, they will try like a bunch of very different things. It's very common. So okay, that's number one. Number two, and sorry, just one more thing. This also goes back to who you are, right? Like, just by people who actually ask this question, you are already a very curious person, perhaps a polymath already. It's just like, this is how if you were to succeed, this is how you're going to succeed. You're not going to succeed by focusing, because like naturally focused people don't ask this question. Right? Yeah. So then you're wasting like 70% of your energy trying to succeed in a path that is not natural to you. Look, okay, just think Da Vinci when you're really struggling. It's just like, it's possible, right? You're just like, it's possible. It's not, don't wrongly attribute the lack of immediate success by the methodology. The methodology works. It's just we haven't executed it yet, right? Or we haven't had the right opportunity, or we are not executing it right, or the timing hasn't come, or you belong to a different path. There are many other explanations to it, not the methodology itself. And then the second thing I would say is how to actually make this sort of wrongly categorize weakness to a strength is to create your own focus with a very diverse set of interests.
The Venn diagram you never thought you would see.
Exactly. But this is actually a very common trick in social media, is that in order to stand out, it's no longer interesting just to be a yoga instructor or plaster worker. You need to always find an intersection of 2 or 3 things and make that your specialty. So like the older diversification is the new focus, right?
That's really cool. Now I know. Now I'm gonna have to go follow this guy after.
Totally.
Jay, I want to thank you for talk about amazing Venn diagram of different things.
Yeah, thank you.
See you later, allocator.
After portfolio tile, investing with a smile.